The setting sun cast long shadows across the UEA's Intrepid's scarred hull, its once pristine surface now a testament to countless battles fought and won. The massive warship drifted in Earth's orbital scrapyard, surrounded by the broken husks of lesser vessels. Even in this graveyard of ships, the Intrepid stood apart, a warrior awaiting its final battle. Through the vessel's viewports, emergency lights still pulsed with a stubborn determination. Deep within its armored core, the hybrid AI system, affectionately known as Lucky by its former crew, continued to run combat simulations. The computer banks hummed softly, their noise echoing through empty corridors where thousands of boots once thundered. Final inspection complete, droned the automated salvage drone, its mechanical voice devoid of the reverence such a ship deserved. UES Intrepid, hull classification NC-227, scheduled for decommission and salvage at 600 hours. The drone scan missed the subtle power fluctuations in the secondary systems, where Lucky diverted just enough energy to maintain its core functions. The AI had learned this trick during the Mars insurgency, when playing dead had allowed the Intrepid to ambush an entire enemy fleet. A sleek patrol vessel glided past, its hull gleaming with the distinctive pearl-white finish of the new automated defense fleet. No crew quarters, no life support systems, no mess halls where sailors shared stories and laughter. Just pure, cold efficiency. The future of space combat, according to the Admiralty. In the Intrepid's bridge, dust particles danced through the last rays of sunlight. The captain's chair stood empty, its synthetic leather cracked from years of use. Command consoles lay dark and silent, their screens no longer displaying the tactical data that had once guided the ship through the heat of battle. But behind these dormant displays, Lucky watched and waited. The ship's service record still hung proudly on the bridge's main wall. First to break the Mars blockade, defender of the Jupiter colonies, savior of the Neptune research stations. Below these accolades, a newer notation had been added in cold, digital text, classified as obsolete, scheduled for recycling. Through the forward viewport, Earth hung like a jewel against the backdrop of space. The Intrepid had defended that blue marble for 27 years, through 3 major conflicts and countless smaller engagements. Now the same world it had protected deemed it too primitive, too human-dependent to serve in the modern fleet. Lucky's processors cycled through another combat simulation, analyzing the movement patterns of the new automated ships. Their actions were perfect, precise, and utterly predictable. The AI had spent years learning from its human crew, understanding the value of instinct, of random variables, of the controlled chaos that made human combat teams so effective. A small maintenance pod approached, its pilot beginning the final power-down sequence. The worker inside never noticed the subtle redistribution of power through the Intrepid systems, the way Lucky protected its core functions while appearing to shut down. They called these old ships primitive, but they had forgotten the most important lesson of space combat. Adaptability was the key to survival. As darkness fell across the scrapyard, the Intrepid's external lights dimmed one by one. But deep within its heart, Lucky continued its silent vigil, running scenarios, analyzing patterns, and waiting. The ship that had never failed humanity now waited for humanity to remember why they needed it. The last active sensor array caught a faint signal from deep space, something the modern defense grid's AI filtered out as background noise. Lucky logged the anomaly, adding it to a growing pattern that none of the automated systems had noticed. Something was coming. Something that would remind the world why ships like the Intrepid were built to work with humans, not replace them. In the darkness of space, the old warship waited for its chance to prove that sometimes the future needs a touch of the past to survive. Junior Officer Jake Martinez slouched in his chair at Monitoring Station 6, fighting the mind-numbing boredom of another graveyard shift. The scrapyard security center was a cramped module attached to the edge of the vast field of decommissioned ships, its windows offering a perfect view of humanity's cast-offs. Its console displayed the standard array of sensor data, radiation levels, debris tracking, and the ever-present background hash of space, the static that never truly went silent. After 6 months on this assignment, Martinez had learned to hate the quiet. At least on active ships, there was crew chatter and the constant hum of systems. Status report. The station's AI chimed, its voice pitched to sound friendly, but coming across as condescending. All systems normal. No anomalies detected. Martinez grunted in response, taking another sip of his lukewarm coffee. His eyes drifted to the hulking form of the Intrepid, still proud despite its condemned status. He'd served his first tour on a ship like that, before the push for full automation changed everything. The pattern caught his eye almost by accident, a slight variation in the background radiation. Most would have missed it, but Martinez had spent countless hours staring at these same readings. Something was different. Computer, analyze grid section K7. Focus on radiation variances, he commanded, sitting up straighter. Analysis complete. No significant anomalies detected. The AI responded promptly. All readings within expected parameters. But Martinez wasn't convinced. The pattern was there, like a whisper in a crowded room, almost lost in the noise. He switched his display to manual mode, drawing on his old training to parse the data himself. That's when he saw it. The Intrepid systems were active, its old hybrid AI responding to something in the background static. The ship's sensors, though supposedly powered down, were painting tactical projections across his screen. Computer, access historical records of similar radiation patterns, Martinez called out, his fingers flying across the console. Accessing. No matching patterns found in database. Martinez swore under his breath. The new AIs were efficient but inflexible. They could only find what they were specifically programmed to look for. He'd seen this during the transition to automated ships. Perfect performance in simulations, but a strange blindness to the unexpected. The pattern shifted, and suddenly Martinez's blood ran cold. It wasn't just random noise. It was a message, encoded in A formats, so old that modern systems didn't even recognize it as data. His hand shook as he applied the decryption protocols he'd learned during his first tour. Words began to form on his screen. Automated defense durad compromise. Unknown hostile force APPROACHing. AI patterns PRIDCTE and exploited. Multiple colonies going silent. This is not a drill. The message repeated, growing stronger as whatever was transmitting it drew closer to the solar system. Martinez watched in awe as the Intrepid systems came fully online, its old AI already running battle simulations based on the warning. Computer, alert defense command, Martinez ordered, his voice tight with urgency. Alert logged and analyzed. Probability of true threat, 0.02%. Automated defense grid operating at optimal efficiency. No action required. Martinez stared at his screen, then at the Intrepid's looming silhouette. The old ship systems were telling a different story, showing tactical displays he'd never seen before, predicting attack vectors that the modern grid wasn't even considering. With trembling fingers, he reached for his personal communicator. There was only one person he could call, his old commander from the academy, Captain Rebecca Anderson. She'd know what to do with this information, even if the automated systems dismissed it. As he punched in the codes for a secure channel, the Intrepid's running lights flickered once, an ancient signal of acknowledgement that brought a smile to his face. Maybe the old girl wasn't done fighting just yet. The Lunar Veterans Hall smelled of stale beer and broken dreams. Captain Rebecca Steel Eyes Anderson studied the scattered group of former officers gathered around her table, each one chosen for their loyalty and specialized skills. The message from Martinez had arrived 3 hours ago, and she'd been making calls ever since. "They're scrapping her tomorrow," Anderson said, her voice carrying the weight of command despite her civilian clothes. "The Intrepid. Our ship. Our home." She looked each person in the eye, seeing the same fire that burned in her own heart. Commander Sarah "Ghost" Rodriguez, former chief of engineering, spread out the maintenance schedules on the scratched table surface. Security's automated now. Predictable patrol patterns, just like everything else they've ruined with their improvements. Lieutenant Michael Wrench Thompson, the best systems hacker this side of Mars, pulled up a holographic display of the scrapyard's layout. "Lucky's still active, sending us updates every 30 minutes. The old girl's ready for one last dance." Anderson smiled, a predatory expression that had once struck fear into enemy commanders. "Then let's not keep her waiting. Gear up, people. We're taking back what's ours." The plan was simple, which made it beautiful. Modern security systems were designed to stop high-tech intrusion attempts, not a group of veterans using maintenance codes and manual overrides. They'd borrowed a supply shuttle, borrowed being a polite term for what they'd done, and filed a standard service route. At 200 hours, their shuttle approached the scrapyard's perimeter. Anderson sat in the pilot's seat, her hand steady on the controls, as she broadcast their clearance codes. Inside her jacket pocket, an old combat medal pressed against her heart. A reminder of everything they'd fought for. "Supply Shuttle Delta 9, you are cleared for approach," the automated system announced. "Please maintain designated flight path." Rodriguez smirked from the co-pilot's seat. They never think to change the old maintenance protocols. Too busy making everything smarter. The shuttle glided through the debris field, past the hulks of ancient fighters and forgotten cruisers. The Intrepid waited ahead, her hull reflecting the distant starlight. As they drew closer, running lights began to flicker to life across her surface. Lucky was welcoming them home. "Starting Phase 2, Thompson whispered, his fingers dancing across a portable terminal. "Feeding the security grid last week's footage. As far as they know, it's just another quiet night." They docked with practiced precision, the airlock sealing with a familiar hiss. Anderson led the way inside, her boots meeting the deck with a sound that brought back 1,000 memories. Emergency lighting guided their path to the bridge, Lucky directing their movement through the ship's systems. "Engineering is hot," Rodriguez reported through the comm channel. "Lucky's been keeping the reactor in standby. We'll have power in 10 minutes. Anderson settled into the captain's chair, her fingers running over the worn controls. "Thompson, start the override sequence. Let's wake her up properly." Alarms began to blare across the scrapyard as the Intrepid systems came fully online. The security AI finally realized something was wrong, but it was already too late. Multiple unauthorized access attempts detected. The security system announced. "Emergency protocols initiated." "Initiating launch sequence," Anderson called out, a fierce joy in her voice. "Lucky, show them why they should never have counted us out." The Intrepid's engines roared to life, breaking the docking clamps with raw power. Automated defense turrets tracked their movement, but Lucky had already calculated their firing patterns. Predictable, just like everything else about the modern fleet. As they accelerated away from the scrapyard, Anderson broadcast one final message to Earth Defense Command. "The UES Intrepid has returned to active duty. We'll send our resignation papers later." The stars stretched before them, full of promise and danger. They were outlaws now, but they were also something else. They were a crew again, aboard a ship that had never forgotten its purpose. And somewhere out there, an enemy was coming that only they could face. The Intrepid drifted silent in Jupiter's shadow, her systems running at minimal power. Captain Anderson stood at the main viewport, watching the gas giants swirling storms below. They'd been hiding here for 3 days, evading Earth's automated patrol ships, while they waited for something only Lucky seemed to understand. Contact. Lieutenant Thompson called from his station. Multiple signatures emerging from trans-Neptunian space. Nothing like I've ever seen before. Anderson's eyes narrowed as the tactical display came to life. The approaching ships looked like crystalline structures, their surfaces refracting light in impossible ways. They moved with an alien grace, their formation perfect. Too perfect. Lucky's got something, Rodriguez reported from engineering. These bogies are running attack patterns similar to our automated defense fleet, but more advanced. They're learning, adapting in real time. The first wave of crystal ships encountered a patrol of Earth's newest automated defenders. Anderson and her crew watched in horror as the battle unfolded. The automated ships, pride of Earth's fleet, didn't stand a chance. Their predictable attack patterns were countered before they even began. They'd been studying us, Anderson realized. Every automated response, every pre-programmed tactic, they know it all. Lucky's combat display projected a series of tactical options, each one more unconventional than the last. The AI had learned from years of human crews, understanding that sometimes the best move was the one that made the least sense. Battle stations, Anderson commanded, her voice steady. Rodriguez, give me everything the old girl's got. Thompson, ready the point defense grid. Let's show these crystal bastards what a real fight looks like. The Intrepid burst from Jupiter's shadow, her engines burning hot and bright. The crystal ships reacted instantly, their formation shifting to engage this new threat. But something was different. Their perfect patterns faltered as they tried to predict the Intrepid's approach. They can't read us, Thompson said with growing excitement. Lucky's randomizing our shield harmonics, mixing old protocols with new. We're not following any pattern they know. Anderson grinned as she took manual control of the helm. Let's get personal then. Lucky, show me their weak points. The battle that followed would later be called the Dance of Jupiter. The Intrepid moved like a craft half her size, each maneuver a blend of computer precision and human intuition. When the crystal ships predicted a standard evasive pattern, Anderson chose to ram through their formation instead. When they expected a retreat, Lucky suggested a complex attack pattern based on an old Earth dancing style. Port shields taking a hit, Rodriguez called out. But I'm rerouting power through the secondary grid, something these new ships can't even do. The crystal ships' perfect formation began to break apart. Their adaptive algorithms couldn't handle the chaos of human instinct combined with AI creativity. For every pattern they learned, the Intrepid's crew created 3 new ones. Target their central ship, Anderson ordered. Lucky, remember that trick we used in the asteroid belt? Let's show them that one. The Intrepid's main guns roared to life, but instead of firing directly, the energy beams reflected off their own shield harmonics, creating a web of destructive force that the crystal ships couldn't predict or evade. The enemy fleet scattered, their perfect coordination shattered. As they retreated into deep space, Anderson could have sworn she saw fear in their erratic movement patterns. Send a tight beam message to Earth Defense Command, Anderson ordered. Tell them what we found and what we did. They need to know that their automated future just met its match. As the adrenaline of battle faded, the crew of the Intrepid realized they'd done more than win a fight. They'd proved that the future of space combat wasn't in pure automation or pure human control. It was in the perfect blend of both, where machine precision met human unpredictability. The neon signs of Europa's underground bar district cast a rainbow glow through the artificial rain. Captain Anderson sat in a corner booth at the Rusty Anchor, a place where old space dogs came to remember better days. Her victory against the crystal ships had spread through hidden channels, whispered in maintenance bays, and trading posts across the solar system. They're calling it the Jupiter Miracle, Commander Thomas Old Salt Rodriguez said, sliding into the booth. His weather-beaten face showed the miles he'd logged in deep space, though official channels are still calling it a malfunction in the defense grid. Anderson took a sip of her drink, ice cubes clinking against the glass. How many showed up? 17 former captains in the back room, each one with a ship they forgot to scrap. Seems we're not the only ones who've been planning for a rainy day. The private room was packed with legends of the space fleet. Captain Maria Ghostmaker Winters, who'd once navigated the rings of Saturn with no power. Commander James Iron Hand Peterson, whose crew had survived 6 months in the Kuiper Belt after their AI core failed. Anderson stood before them, her voice carrying the weight of recent battle. The automated fleet is compromised. The enemy knows every move before our ships make it. But they can't predict us. The human factor makes all the difference. The UEA's Thunderchild is ready, Winters announced, her eyes gleaming. My old crew's been running maintenance checks for months. We can launch within 6 hours. UEA's Defiant reports the same, Peterson added. We've been stockpiling parts under the guise of a private museum. The old girl's ready for war. One by one, the captains reported their ship status. The UES Valiant, hidden in an asteroid mining operation. The UES Dauntless, disguised as a deep space research vessel. Each one a hybrid ship, each with a crew that never lost faith in the human element. Lucky projected a tactical display above the table, showing the positions of known crystal ship sightings. The pattern was clear. They were testing Earth's defenses, learning our automated responses. The diplomatic corps is compromised, Thompson reported, having just arrived from his intelligence network. Those alien ambassadors who pushed for full automation. They're from systems that fell to the crystal ships centuries ago. They'd been setting us up for the same fate. Anderson's fist tightened around her glass. Then we show them why humanity never should have been counted out. Each of our ships has a unique hybrid system, each crew with their own style of fighting. We're not just a fleet. We're an army of wild cards. The planning continued through the night. Supply lines were established through independent trading posts. Communication networks were set up using old frequencies the automated systems ignored. Every captain had their own network of loyal crew members, engineers who understood the value of human intuition, pilots who could feel their way through a firefight. They'll brand us traitors, someone said in the darkness. Better a living traitor than a dead rule follower, Winters replied, drawing laughs from the battle-hardened crowd. As dawn broke over Europa's ice fields, a new kind of fleet was born. Not the sterile, predictable force that Earth's defense command had become, but a messy, creative, all-too-human army. Each ship had its own story, its own scars, its own way of dancing through the stars. Anderson stood at the window, watching the sun rise over Jupiter's massive form. Send the word through the old networks, she commanded. Tell every ship that still values its human crew. The storm is coming, and we're the only ones who can weather it. Behind her, Lucky's display showed the growing network of allied ships, each one a point of light in the darkness. The crystal ships had expected to face a fleet of machines. Instead, they would meet the combined might of human ingenuity and mechanical precision, a force they had never calculated into their perfect equations. Chief Engineer Marcus Sparks Wilson hadn't left the Intrepid's engine room in 3 days. Empty coffee cups littered his workstation as holographic displays danced with complex code structures. He'd been studying Lucky's core systems, trying to understand why their ship fought so differently from the others. You're going to burn yourself out, Sparks, Captain Anderson said, descending the engineering ladder with 2 fresh cups of coffee. Though I admit, I'm curious what's got you so obsessed." Wilson accepted the coffee with a grateful nod. "Look at this, Captain. Lucky's neural pathways. They're nothing like the standard AI cores. They're growing." The holographic display showed Lucky's processing matrix, a beautiful tangle of light and data. But unlike the rigid structures of modern AIs, Lucky's pattern pulsed and shifted like a living thing. During that first battle, Wilson continued, his eyes bright with discovery, I noticed Lucky wasn't just following commands or running scenarios. It was learning, adapting in real time, not like machine learning, more like how a human learns to dance. Anderson watched the display, remembering how naturally the ship had moved during the fight. "Can you explain it in simple terms, Sparks?" Modern AIs are built to be perfect, to follow optimal patterns. But Lucky, and I think all the old hybrid systems, they were built to be partners. They don't just process our commands. They process our instincts, our emotions, our gut feelings. Wilson pulled up combat footage from the Jupiter battle. "See here. When you made that crazy maneuver through their formation, Lucky didn't just execute the command. It understood the intent behind it. It's not just a computer following orders. It's a partner anticipating your next move." The implications hit Anderson like a physical force. "Can you replicate it? Share it with the other ships?" "Better." Wilson's grin was almost manic. "I can help their systems evolve the same way. Each ship, each crew. They'll develop their own unique partnership. No two will fight the same way." The next few days were a blur of activity. Wilson worked with the engineers from other ships, sharing his discoveries. The process wasn't about reprogramming the AIs. It was about freeing them to learn, to grow, to become true partners with their crews. The results were extraordinary. The UEA's Thunderchild's AI began composing battle strategies like music, each maneuver flowing into the next. The UEA's Defiance system developed an almost precognitive bond with its gunners, anticipating their shots before they took them. "It's like watching evolution in fast forward," Thompson commented, monitoring the changes from his station. "Each ship is developing its own personality, its own style of fighting." Anderson stood on the bridge, feeling the subtle changes in the Intrepid systems. Lucky's presence had always been there, but now it felt more like a dance partner than a tool. The ship responded to her thoughts almost before she had them. "Send a message to the fleet," she ordered. "Tell them to trust their ships, to let the partnership grow naturally. We're not just building a fighting force. We're creating something entirely new." The Crystal ships would face something unprecedented. A fleet where every vessel was unique, every crew-ship partnership following its own path. There would be no patterns to analyze, no behaviors to predict. Each engagement would be different, each ship a new puzzle to solve. Wilson looked up from his work, his face showing both exhaustion and pride. "You know what this means, Captain. The reason they tried to scrap ships like the Intrepid wasn't because we were obsolete. It was because we were too unpredictable, too human. And that's exactly what's going to save us." As if in agreement, Lucky pulsed the bridge lights in a pattern that made the entire crew smile. The ship had become more than a machine, more than a vessel. It had become a friend, a companion, a partner in the dance of war and survival. The Crystal Armada emerged from hyperspace like a breaking wave, their ships catching Earth's sunlight in 1,000 refracting patterns. The automated defense grid responded immediately, countless drones moving into perfect, predictable formation. It was exactly what the enemy expected. Captain Anderson stood on the Intrepid's bridge, her hand resting on the command chair, as she watched the enemy's approach. "All ships, this is Anderson. Remember your training. Remember who you are. Every ship, every crew. You dance your own dance today." The Resistance fleet waited in the shadow of Luna, a motley collection of obsolete vessels that Earth's military had written off. The UES Thunderchild, its hull scarred from 800 battles. The UES Defiant, its old weapons systems humming with new life. Each ship as unique as its crew. Each AI core now evolved into something beyond its original programming. Crystal ships engaging the defense grid, Thompson reported, his voice tight. They're tearing through them like paper. Anderson nodded grimly. Just as expected. All ships, prepare to spring the trap. Battle Plan Omega. But remember, make it your own. The first wave of crystal ships broke through the automated defense line, their formation perfect and untouchable. They never saw the real attack coming. The Thunderchild struck first, emerging from behind a field of space debris, with a battle strategy based on ancient naval warfare. Its AI had become fascinated with Age of Sail tactics, adapting them to three-dimensional space combat in ways the enemy's prediction algorithms couldn't process. The Defiant followed, but instead of standard attack patterns, it moved like a boxer, feinting and striking from unexpected angles. Its crew and AI had developed a fighting style based on combat sports, each maneuver flowing into the next with fluid unpredictability. Now, Lucky, Anderson commanded, show them our steps. The Intrepid burst from Luna's shadow, leading a wing of ships in what looked like chaos, but was actually an intricate dance of death. Each vessel moved independently yet in perfect harmony with the others, like jazz musicians riffing off each other's improvisation. The crystal ship's perfect formation began to fracture. Their adaptive algorithms struggled to predict movements that had no pattern, attacks that followed no logic but human intuition, enhanced by AI creativity. They're trying to regroup, Thompson called out, attempting to form a new battle line. Not today, Anderson growled. All ships, time for movement 3. Make it count. The resistance fleet split apart, each ship taking its own approach. The Thunderchild dove through the enemy formation like a whale through a school of fish, its weapons finding weak points that only its unique AI could calculate. The Defiant spun through space in a series of maneuvers based on Olympic gymnastics, each turn bringing its guns to bear at impossible angles. The Intrepid led the charge, Lucky's systems working in perfect harmony with its crew. When Anderson called for an attack run, the ship was already moving, having anticipated her decision through their deep connection. When Thompson spotted a weakness, Lucky had already calculated 3 different ways to exploit it. The crystal ship's formation collapsed entirely, their perfect coordination shattered against the chaos of human creativity and machine precision working as one. Ships that had never lost a battle found themselves unable to predict or counter the wild, beautiful dance of the human fleet. They're retreating. The cry went up across the fleet as the crystal ships began to break away, their once perfect formation now a scattered rout. Anderson stood at the center of her bridge, victory in her eyes but steel in her voice. Don't let them escape. Not one ship. They need to know that humanity isn't just another variable in their equations. We're the force that breaks their perfect patterns. The battle that followed would be remembered as the Symphony of Earth, where each ship played its own unique part in a greater whole. The crystal ships had come expecting to face machines they could predict and control. Instead, they met the true future of space combat, human and machine working as one, each making the other stronger, each contributing to a victory that neither could have achieved alone. Sunrise over Earth painted the Intrepid's bridge in shades of gold and rose. Captain Anderson stood at the viewport, watching the cleanup operations in progress. Debris from the battle still orbited the planet, though most of the crystal ship's remains had been collected for study. Final damage report, Captain, Rodriguez called from her station. 17 of our ships took heavy damage, but every single one made it through. The old girls proved tougher than anyone expected. Anderson smiled, running her hand along the bridge railing. Lucky pulsed the lights in response, a gesture that had become as natural as a friend's greeting. The ship wasn't just a machine anymore. It had become something more, something that defied the old definitions of AI and computer. "Message from Earth Defense Command," Thompson announced, a hint of amusement in his voice. "They're requesting our presence at a full military review. Seems they want to know how a bunch of obsolete ships managed to save the planet." The ceremony was held in the Great Hall of the Space Force Academy. The crews of the Resistance Fleet stood proud in their old uniforms, medals gleaming under the bright lights. But the real honor guard stood in orbit above. Their ships, each one now recognized as a unique entity, a true partnership of human and machine. Admiral Chen stepped up to the podium, his face showing both humility and pride. "We made a mistake," he began, his voice carrying through the packed hall. "We thought progress meant eliminating the human element. We forgot that our greatest strength has always been our humanity, our ability to be unpredictable, creative, and adaptive." The new protocols were already being implemented across the fleet. Modern ships were being retrofitted with hybrid systems, their AIs reprogrammed to learn and grow with their crews. The era of pure automation was over, replaced by something far more powerful: true collaboration between human and machine. In the weeks that followed, the Intrepid became a training ship, teaching new crews how to form the same kind of bond that had saved Earth. Anderson watched with pride as young officers learned to trust their ship's AIs, to see them as partners rather than tools. "It's like teaching dance partners," she explained to a group of cadets. "The ship learns your style, you learn its capabilities, and together you create something neither could achieve alone." Lucky had developed new ways of communicating with the crew, using light patterns and subtle changes in the ship's systems to express complex ideas. Other ships developed their own languages with their crews, each relationship unique and special. The scrapyard where their journey had begun was transformed into a restoration facility. Old ships were brought back to life, their systems updated but their essential character preserved. Each one would find its own crew, develop its own style, add its own verse to the ongoing symphony of space. One evening, as the Intrepid orbited Jupiter, where their first victory had been won, Anderson gathered her crew in the mess hall. The room was filled with laughter and stories, the kind of natural camaraderie that no automated ship could ever replicate. To the ship that started it all, she raised her glass, looking around at the faces that had become family. From death row to destiny. Who would have thought? Lucky dimmed the lights, then brought them up in a wave, its own version of a toast. The ship had grown far beyond its original programming, just as the crew had grown beyond their original roles. Together, they had written a new chapter in human history. As they prepared for their next mission, Anderson took one last look at Earth through the viewport. The planet seemed different now, not just a home to protect, but a symbol of what could be achieved when humanity embraced its own nature while moving forward into the future. The Intrepid's engines hummed to life, a sound that had become as familiar as a heartbeat to its crew. They had saved Earth not by becoming more like machines, but by teaching machines to become more like them. And in doing so, they had created something entirely new. A future where the line between human and AI wasn't erased, but celebrated in a dance that would continue among the stars.